Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. It is our weekly What is in the Stack. How this will work, Mike and I from the top are going to talk about a topic that means a lot to us about comic books, just kind of a conceptual thing, and discuss our thoughts on it. And then at the end, we are going to go through our respective stacks of comics from last Wednesday, go through what was good, what was bad. Big week for both of us. Yeah, you had a nice stack, Mike, and then I had a decent stack this week. It was a really, really good week of comics. I'll say that before we even go through them. Great new releases, great facsimile issues, really great week. So we'll dive into all that at the end of the video. But from the top, we wanted to talk about was the concept of multiverses. We're seeing this more and more and more in comic books, and this has always been a light part of comic books. I think you look back at, Flash of Two Worlds. You had the, Jay Garrick and Barry Allen. Was it Flash 123, Mike? Is that right? Is that the crossover with those two? And that was kind
Yep.
of, I think, the first time there was like a multiverse sort of thing that you could say. I think where this has gone now, though, is it's everywhere. We have currently Marvel is producing an Ultimate line of comics and a main universe line of comics. And every month there's like a Spider-Verse line of comic books that comes out. You've got DC with the Absolute Universe now and their main continuity, in addition to all of these other continuities that exist. And so we thought we would just talk a little bit about the concept of multiverses. I think this has also come to light a lot with DC and Marvel's movies. Noticeably as well, it's kind of also been like a precipitous decline in box office receipts of the multiverse as well. Outside of really what Spider-Man No Way Home with the multiverse Spider-Mans, and I guess Deadpool and Wolverine would technically be a multiverse movie, there hasn't been a lot of box office success with this concept either. So we just thought we'd talk about, do we think this has been a bad thing for comics, comic book movies, and the comic book world? And do we think there is any actual value in this concept? So, Mike, I will kick it to you to start, sir. Multiverses, as a comic book fan, do you like the concept of it? Do you hate the concept of it? Where are you at on like a multiverse sort of thing?
As a Flash fan, of course, you have to love the multiverse kind of thing because it was so exciting in the Silver Age to have Jay Garrick come in and run around in modern comics at the time. They brought him back. Just a few years after Flash was rebooted and started the Silver Age of comic books. The writers had to figure out a way, like, wouldn't it be cool, and let's just see if the audience would like it, if we had the Golden Age Flash hop in. And oh, how is that going to happen? And he's a different Flash from a different time. And well, the writers came up with this concept of, oh, we'll just have him from a different universe, and if the Flash vibrates at the right frequency, he can interact with a parallel universe. So that was a brilliant concept, and of course, it was used quite well. I think sparingly so, but quite well. And DC got away with it, and I think pulled it off well for the first 30 years of multiverses. But I the way I see it now, and I think it's a reality staring in the face of the creators right now when you have to, because continuity has gotten so messy, when you have
So
to
convoluted.
when you need to tell a different story but you can't because continuity is all messed up, then you go and create a multiverse story, and it's a big hit because the characters are suddenly more recognizable now. They're
New, it's
simplified.
fresh.
it's
You
a
can,
it's
yeah.
a it's a fresh take on a character you love. You're not afraid to jump in because you got so discouraged with the main line 5 or 10 years ago, like I did. You stop buying it, so you don't know what the heck's going on month after month. You don't want to know. And then you get like the absolute universe or the ultimate universe. You're like, oh, take a chance on Spider-Man and Wolverine or Black Panther. And it just gives the creatives a fresh tablet to start off with. But it's also, staring you in the face like, oh, hey, if we just, retconned and fixed the continuity on the main line, maybe we'd have more success selling our legacy characters that way, because the fans seem to like it when you start from a fresh point, and maybe we made some wrong turns in the past
Anyway,
with our characters' continuity. So yeah, I'm a fan of it, but reluctantly so, because I would really like these characters to have a fresh chance in a main continuity. What ends up happening is these books, are short series, they're short lived, and then they're gone. And then I'm left to try and decide if I'm going to buy a comic in main continuity of a character I love that I'm not following anymore because continuity got weird and went sideways.
okay. No, I think multiverses are interesting because there's a huge amount of benefits to them, but they are the lazy crutch now. And so I think we used to have where it wasn't like multiverse, it was just a different, I think they used to call them Elseworlds. And I
Yeah,
used to like the Elseworld stories because they were always kind of seen as these cordoned off little one shots,
like
like,
like Marvel's What If
yeah, what
in the
if
70s.
Batman Gotham by Gaslight? It was like Batman in Victorian England, right? It was cool conceptual things that were never intended to outlive their original kind of six issue sort of what if kind of thing, right? Marvel used to do those brilliant comics, what if Spider-Man saved Gwen Stacy? What if Jane became worthy of the hammer? All that kind of fun stuff that they used to do. I think what's happened now is they take multiverses way too seriously, and the interweaving of the main continuity and these multiverses ruins both of them, I think, because like Spider-Man right now has a good example of Ultimate Spider-Man is a great comic book. It is well written, it is well drawn, it outsells, I believe, almost every other comic. It's between that and Absolute Batman, which is another example, where these old multiverse versions of Batman and Spider-Man have ongoing series with better creatives than the creatives that are on the main Spider-Man title and Batman title. And so at a certain point, it kind of is like, wait a second, the flagship titles of these companies have worse creatives and sell worse than these offshoot multiverse variant books. And I think what multiverses have become is it's the cheapest way to just do whatever the heck you want. It is a way that writers get to come in and go, I didn't like that story, I'm ignoring it. I didn't like that decade of story, I'm ignoring it. I want to change this fundamentally about Batman or Spider-Man or Black Panther or Wolverine or the Avengers, whoever. I'm just going to ignore it and do my own thing. And it's weird because readers have responded to that really well. But I think the reason readers have responded to it well is they actually seem to think things through a little bit more in these ultimate versions and these absolute versions than they do in the main continuity. The main continuity, like you said, I think for the first 30, 40 years of comic books, while there are exceptions and there were stupid ideas that happened, for the most part, it did seem to have a lot of consideration and care for the idea of, hey, this is one ongoing narrative. And when
they
it
they
got
had
convoluted,
editors that curated that
mhm,
painstakingly over decades,
to
and
make sure things weren't aligned. And were there retcons? Were there things that didn't? Yes, absolutely. I'm sure people will, hey, in 1972, there was this comic that retcon. Of course, there's been small ones, but not to the glaring degree that we had largely since, and I have to say this, my generation of comics, the 90s. The 90s started doing things where it got harder to believe the characters were all in the same universe. You had the Spider-Man, the Clone Saga where he got replaced, and the Ben. And again, I like those comics, but that's convoluted. You had the whole Onslaught thing where the Avengers were thrown into a different universe for a year, an Age of Apocalypse with alternate timelines, and these all got interweaved and intermingled with the main narrative to where now you look at the X-Men and it's like we have Rachel Summers running around who is an alternate universe daughter of Jean and Scott from a different timeline who lives in the main continuity. And it's like that makes no sense whatsoever
it's
that that
head
character is
spinning.
here.
When you describe it, it's head spinning, right?
Well, and then, it got even worse as you continued on because you had stuff like Brian Michael Bendis doing all new X-Men, where the X-Men from the 60s were brought to the current timeline and lived at the same. And you had all these lazy kind of ideas and no one there. I hate the show, but like Loki has that whole TVA thing and of like pruning the alternate timelines. It seems like no one was there to prune off these story ideas anymore. And so I think we have the
There was
worst
no
of all worlds.
TVA. Yeah, no TVA.
Well, we have the worst of all worlds now where we have extended multiverses with great talent on them, weaker talent on the main books, but then it all intermingles and interweaves anyway. And so it's so hard to get invested because it also seems like some of the ideas that are in these multiverse books should just be the main title. Like that
Exactly.
Marvel can't get the idea that, hey, like Mary Jane married to Spider-Man with kids and all this is selling infinitely better than the main Amazing Spider-Man book. Maybe the lesson was you screwed up and you did the wrong thing with Spider-Man's development.
Yeah.
Instead of going, hey, let's fix that in the meantime, it's like, let's just launch an alternate title. And I know there's different things happening in the Ultimate Universe than that, but Ultimate Black Panther sells really well, has an ongoing book. Main universe, Black Panther doesn't have a solo title because they have wrecked that book. And so
Yeah.
what has happened with multiverses is it has, as you said, it's become the crutch, the lazy cheat of you never have to fully deal with the consequences of your actions as a writer because we just retcon it or bring in an alternate universe or oh there was a reset to the timeline. And so what I would propose to fix this, I think comic books are at a place where people are more in the manga format of things now, where they like slow contained stories, right? You can have one run for 20, 30 years if it's super successful, but I think a huge appeal of so much of the storytelling for a lot of people is it's 10 years, I have a clear starting point, a clear ending point, and then it's done.
Yeah.
I do think comics has got to get past the ongoing stage of these characters being 80-year legacies. And I hate saying that because I used to value so much that Batman was this character from the 30s to now, but it doesn't work anymore. They've retconned and ruined so many things. There's so much stuff that's happened, universe resets, all these lazy things. I think comics would actually be better off, Mike, and I'll be interested if you would agree on this, if we just said every decade we hit the reset button. Every decade at the start, we do a new number one. We do a new continuity for about 10 years with Spider Man. We run through all of our guys. We run that story for 10 to 12 years, and then we hit the reset button. And we start over with a new generation of, hey, it's another number one, and you know for 10 to 12 years. Because I think that would actually give a feel of you're on the ground floor of something starting. Right now, we have the worst of all worlds because the main continuity resets anyway. These alternate multiverse ones get great talent and then they end too quickly. And so I think if we just kind of married everything together, especially because there's so much great talent on these multiverse books.
I
Why do I
know.
have the main continuity Batman book written by a worse writer than Batman in the Absolute Universe? And this like the best Spider-Man writer right now is Jonathan Hickman. He doesn't write Amazing Spider-Man. The best Batman writer Scott Snyder. He doesn't write Batman. And so I think it would just get to where if you did do a reset, I don't know what the right timeline would be, 10 to 15 years maybe, but just give readers a point of, hey, it's a number one, you're going to follow this for 10 to 15 years and then we can reset. What do you think that could be something they could do?
I think right now everything is so short-sighted,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's impossible for them to do that. I think it's a solid idea, and hey, maybe it starts out like a 5 year thing,
Yeah.
um, because you know they'd really have to come up with a plan. And from all the research I've done, they really uh, it was a different world right back then, but they did think out the storyline for the year for
Mm-hmm.
each character, and they really put a lot of effort and thought into that. And sometimes those plans, went for 2 or 3 years. Um, but it seems to me, I know that they probably still make plans like that, but I don't know. I can't see the long term planning. The problem is that they put in a plan for a year, and then things go sideways and they change it up. And I think it's just a year at a time. The other thing that was going on in the past is that you knew there would be a year two, a year three, a year four. They just knew it was going to happen. And in today's environment, you don't know if there's going to be a year two of this story, or a
Yeah.
three, or a four. You just don't know, because we could get canceled. The studio heads could say, "Hey, we're going to do a movie of character X, and now you've got to put them in every
Now
book."
you gotta kill the
And
main character and replace it with a
and then
more
there
MCU version. Yeah.
and then there goes your plan. Like, even if you started out doing that, and you and I have talked about this a lot. Like, the studio heads are using this as an idea farm,
Mhm.
and that's great. But the way the farm worked before it was called an idea farm was, you had you had the editorial board, and you had these great creators, and they were, kind of enlisted to carry these characters forward for 100 issues, 200 issues, 30 issues, 50 issues, 300 issues.
Yeah.
And they worked diligently to push those characters forward, with no movie and very little merchandising in sight. That was all tertiary, secondary to the main cause, which was the story and the art, which is what comics is all about: good story, good art. And they delivered on that with no promise of movies or anything like that. And I do feel, generally, if they just let the farm be what it was before it was called a farm, they would have stronger movie ideas for the bigger plans that the higher ups have for this industry. So would I love it if they just did a 10-year and a reboot? Yeah, because then, you'd have,
When you start
100,
something, it matters at least. Yeah, you got 100
and
something.
you're on it for 120 issues, and you're the steward of this, and you're going to have a job tomorrow. Whereas right now, I think that nobody really knows if they're going to have a job tomorrow. Everyone is going to, quit and go to the indies. They might come back, they might get famous, they might, start doing covers only, that kind of thing. It's not the true stewardship of
It
what
used
it
to be there in the
was.
90s where it kind of felt like there was people who took ownership of
Yeah.
like Claremont with X-Men, right? Chris Claremont was X-Men for a really
Yes.
long time. And that's why, the trains were always on time, so to speak, with X-Men, was you
Yeah.
had this one. I think that would be what they need to do because what I would say has hurt most with modern comics, I don't even necessarily know if the comics are because I hear some comics are bad and stuff like that. Now, and look, there's crap comic books out there, but I think the biggest problem is what's the reward in me reading the ongoing series anymore? And I know I have used this character a lot lately, but I have been buying Iron Man since 2008, since the movie came out.
Yeah.
Okay, Iron Man had in that timeline, the Invincible Iron Man with Fraction was pretty good. Since then, there was the Marvel Now run where he was revealed to not be Tony Stark or Howard Stark's kid. That never really carried over into anything. Then he kind of died, and then a clone inhabited his body. He was inhabiting a clone's body. And then he got in a relationship with Hellcat for like 2 years and almost got married to her, and then that's never been touched again. And then he dated the Wasp for a while, and that's never been touched on again. And then he married Emma Frost. You can think with it, but then that really doesn't get touched on anymore. And Stark Industries, he's regained the company, lost the company. And it's like, if I just took this as, hey, I've been watching, if it was a TV show, and I looked at I've been watching this show for 17 years. If you ask me, Reed, like what's the through line of this? I don't know. Like I don't know what the arc for Tony Stark has been. They do the dang reset button anyway. And so the whole thing is with all of these characters, no one seems, like you said, to have a plan. And I think where we have to start getting to where there is at least some long-term thinking. And I remember this with the new 52 more than anything. My
They tried.
biggest
They
They
really tried.
tried, but there was always a feeling with the new 52. And this is where I'll always be mad at DC for pulling the plug on the new 52. The entire time the new 52 is going, I had a bunch of friends who are at comic book stores going, this is not going to last. They're going to hit the reset button. They're not actually going to commit to this. And they were right. They didn't. And what was so
But
sad is
It went on for like 3 years, 4 years,
Five, I think 52
5 years.
issues was the most any ran. So you're four, before 5 years, it was wrapped up.
Yeah.
The biggest reason that the new 52 sucked, in my opinion, was not the fact of the content that was in there. Because what's crazy about the new 52 is when people are complaining about the now, all those creatives are basically the Ghost Machine creatives now that we all think are amazing, incredible creatives.
They
And you
were
go back
good
and
creatives.
you look at the talent on the new 52 and you're like, man, the good old days and we had A-list writers, which is kind of
Yeah.
hilarious because when the new
Right.
52 was going, that is not what people were saying at that time. But
Yeah.
where the new 52 was such a failure, in my opinion, was the fact that they didn't stick to it. Everybody knew they were going to hit the reset button at some point. There was always that through line of they're not going to. And so it was impossible to stick to what they were doing because when they did start the new 52 and we've got Barry as a young Flash again who's not married and oh, this could have a lot of potential. And then as things went, it was like, nope, we have to keep bringing back the old crap. And you can blame that's fans complaining. But the biggest thing is it was because DC themselves could never shut the door. They couldn't commit to it. Batman fell apart in the new 52 because it was like, well, we like where Batman was. So even though it's a complete reset, all of his Robins are still going to be here. And it's like, no, you can't have a reset where there's four Robins and everyone else is young. Like, that doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Yeah.
And because they shut the door on it, there was some beautiful endings before Flashpoint with stuff like with Superman and Lois Lane, where they literally flew off together into the sunset. You could have closed that as the chapter, had New 52 Superman be a starting point. And if it was still going, we would be at 13 years of like Superman's main love interest is Wonder Woman. By this time, that would actually be set. That would be something of like, hey man, that's a long term. But there was always a feeling of you're not going to stick to this. And that's what stunk about that. And that's what stinks about so many comic books now is like as much as I wasn't a fan of the decision, when they had Tony Stark marry Emma Frost in the comics about a year back, I was like, you know what? I don't like it. It's probably not a character Tony Stark should marry. But I'll tell you what, if they stick with this, and in 2 years from now, there's still a married Iron Man to this X-Men character, and you
Yeah.
intermingle Tony Stark more into the X-Men universe, that could be something that's actually sort of interesting. And
Yeah.
nope, of course, 6 issues later, gone, done. It was a fraud. Doesn't matter. Completely meaningless issues now.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is they're already hitting the reset button anyway. So I think where multiverses have destroyed things is writers now I think save some of their best ideas and best creatives for these multiverse offshoot books because those guys know, hey, it's more like an indie where I'm kind of untethered. I can do what I
Yeah.
want to do, take the risks that I want to take. And the reason I think they're successful is because of that. And so the main continuity has now become almost like the cheap, lazy knockoff version of like, oh, that's like I know for me, when I read Ultimate Spider-Man, as much as I still at a some level enjoy reading Amazing Spider-Man, even though we'll do a video later this week talking about all the problems with that book. There is a part of me when I'm reading Ultimate Spider-Man, it's like this is just so much cleaner and nicer to read
It
because I know where Peter
is.
is and he feels like Peter. And there's not all this baggage of he sold this thing to Mephisto and all these stupid stories that have dragged in. And I think that's Batman. I'll say this, I still love main continuity Batman, but like if I read, and this is from the stack this week, this Batman Dark Patterns comic, this is just a Batman comic book where there's Gordon as commissioner and Alfred and all the stuff I love about Batman. And then like, oh, I gotta go back to the main continuity where like Alfred's dead and it's not that I want all the toys back in the toy chest. It's that if I believed it all that Alfred Pennyworth was dead forever in Batman canon, I'd be okay with it. I know they won't stick to it. He'll be back. Gordon as commissioner, he's like a detective again. Okay, so like a couple years from now, Gordon's gonna be commissioner again. Like that's the thing is if these changes in the main universe actually mattered and they didn't use the cheap multiverse reset thing all the time, we might get and I think the movies has been the greatest thing to this because it almost feels like things don't matter anymore. I think one of the dumbest decisions you can make in a movie is when you make it where, oh, there's just multiverse copies. Like my biggest problem with Avengers Endgame, and I have a lot. At some point, you and I will have to do a video about how much I hate Avengers Endgame, except for about 10 cool minutes at the end. Infinity War does this great moment in the middle of the movie where Thanos kills Gamora. And that should
Yeah.
be a massively impactful event in the
It
MCU.
was huge. It was huge
It
when
was
it
a
happened.
dramatic portion in the movie. It really, I thought, showed the commitment of Thanos as a villain. This is this beloved character from two great movies. This should have been a massive through line of change for this. Instead, we literally just pull a multiverse copy out the next film.
Whoop,
And
she's
I
back.
know, they did the whole, oh, well, Gamora's the different version and she's no longer in love with Peter Quill. And there was a little
Yeah.
bit of that. But at the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I still
Yeah.
have Gamora teamed up with the Guardians
Yeah.
fighting together and stopping the bad guy at the end. And it's
Yeah.
like, if that had been that Gamora's just dead and it's gone, and that moment matters. They killed Loki. It's a multiverse copy of Loki. Loki's been on screen more since his death than he ever was before. And
Yeah.
that's the problem with so much of this is when you watch, I think, movies, you want those moments to matter. If there's I just look at any great movie and I'm like, if there was some lazy, like in Rocky 2, if it had been, oh, here's the multiverse where Rocky actually beat Apollo Creed in the
Yeah.
first movie, like, okay, then did the first movie matter? Like, what's the
Yeah.
point of this? And
Yeah.
and I think that is where we've got to multiverses, like you said, in stuff like Flash 123, sparingly used. It's cool. Star Trek always did this with like the mirror universe, right? With like evil Spock. That's interesting for a couple of episodes. It didn't
Yeah.
become that at the end of the episode, evil Spock just stays with the crew and hangs out, and you've got Spock and evil Spock teaming up for the rest of the series. And
That's
so I think they've got to
ridiculous.
go.
Yeah.
I think I would can all the main stuff, can them all the multiverse stuff, and just maybe every decade start with a new number one, and then every 10, 12 years you hit the nuke button on it, reset everything, and go. And at least it would get us some investment. But let us know. What do you guys think? What do you think of multiverses? Do you think they have been good or bad for comic books? And again, I think it's a complicated one because I will say there is some great multiverse stuff out there that I do love. It's a weird overall thing. So really would be interested to see what you guys think below. What we'll do to close out the video, we're just going to go through our respective stacks, larger stacks for both of us this week. I think this was the best week of comics that I
Yeah.
can remember in a while. I had about 7 or 8 great books I'd recommend to folks. But Mike, I'll kick it to you first, sir. What is in your stack for the week, sir?
Uh, in my pull box, we
Speaking of
also
the multiverse.
this classic book,
Yep, Detective Comics Facsimile 31, The
number
Mad Monk. Yep.
31, with that amazing cover, the old school Batman. Jackson really enjoyed this show. So we got this is a collection. It's like a graphic novel. I have not watched it, but I'm interested to read and watch this show. Let me know, guys. Are you watching my new adventures with Superman? Do you like it like Jackson does? We also have this is a great cover, by the way. This is really cool.
Oh,
Spectacular
the
Spider-Man.
Peter and Miles team up book. Okay, Spectacular Spider-Man. Okay.
Yep, that one's pretty cool. Me and my facsimiles.
Okay. Batman the Animated Series. Yep.
I love it. I love it. This book, I like. I know it's got all kinds of ties, but Black Lightning is a great character. I love the TV show, and this book has been pretty interesting. It's got a lot of ties to other books apparently, but I'm fine just reading it like it is. So, I don't know if anybody else is reading Black Lightning. It's on number 5. I'm only up to number 4, so I haven't.
You're
I need
catching
to
up.
finish 4 and get to number 5. Uh, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. This is a classic.
Another great connection. I think that's first appearance of
Yeah.
John Constantine in there. So yeah,
Again,
good.
I think I'm buying 2-to-1
You're on the
facsimiles.
facsimile. No, much
But
like
I'm
you.
I'm old school. I love the old
It's
comics.
great to get classic comics for print. I mean, much like you, I had all 3 of those in mine this week as well.
Yeah.
I had an additional one of Uncanny X-Men 133. Great to read a great X-Men comic. Sadly, it was written 4 decades ago, but it was great to read a good X-Men comic book this week.
Yeah.
So all those are good. Would definitely, if folks have not seen facsimile issues on the stands, they do release quite a few. This was 4 this week. There's typically 1 or 2 a week. It's great if you're kind of burned out on modern comics. Sometimes you catch some of these runs that maybe you've heard about or haven't read. And I think Marvel has done a really good job of releasing like 12 issue kind of periods in a row, so you can get almost like a year worth of facsimile storytelling. That's really cool. For me this week, I think I had almost like 12 or 14 comics, but I'm only going to go through a couple here. Absolute Superman #5. A lot about the destruction of Krypton, how Superman got to Earth. I actually liked this issue quite a bit. There's just enough threads in Absolute Wonder Woman and Superman that I keep reading. I know they lost you as a reader on those. Absolute Batman's by far the gem of that line. But I will say, I think there's enough threads, and we got Absolute Flash this week, which we will try to do a review as soon as that comes out on Wednesday to go
Can't
through
wait for
that. I
that
know
one.
that's an interesting one. And I think we got Absolute Martian Manhunter this month as well. So we'll see how those launch. The ones that I thought were pretty good this week, and I think this was a week where I would recommend almost 8 or 9 comics. Batman Dark Patterns #4. This is about Dan Waters with Hayden Sherman. Again, just a classic set Batman story. This is what these offshoot books should be. This could take place anywhere in continuity. It is Batman kind of going through and figuring out this mystery of murders that are happening inside this kind of tower. It's a really well written book. Dan Waters has a great voice for Batman in the book. Really good art, really engaging story. And again, it's one of those things where you don't need to know all the continuity. If you just like Batman and want a really easy Batman story to read that's just Batman being a detective and all the classic stuff, that is a great series. Only the 4th issue, really good there. I will also say Batman and Robin #19, Philip Kennedy Johnson. Really, really strong work from him on this book. It's a great team up book with Bruce and Damian. Great character moments for both. It's great to see Batman actually acting like a dad and kind of having a father-son relationship with him. I think the cool thing Philip Kennedy Johnson does is he doesn't just buy into the Batman being a jerk thing. He actually has Batman act like a pretty good father, but at the same time always having that Batman element of things that he can't let go. There's a great
Yeah.
scene in the book where he's talking about how Robin and him should go get like a hamburger and fries and stuff like that. And Robin's all kind of stunned, like, "Are you actually like doing this to have fun?" And he's like, "Of course we'll have to like work out 4 hours more to burn." So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of great writing of Batman. Philip Kennedy Johnson, he did a really good Action Comics run. He's doing really good on Batman and Robin. He's a really great writer, I think, for a lot of comics. The other DC book that I had, Aquaman #3. Jeremy Adams is killing it on this book. Really great writing. I think John Timms is on the art on this. Great to see Aquaman back on the stands and have a strong book. Jeremy Adams, I think he just continues to be the new Jeff Johns. Really good at writing characters and really does a great job there. Action Comics, disappointing again. I'm ready for John Ridley to be off Action Comics. Buying that out of loyalty at this point. I believe we're getting Mark Waid again, so that'll be good. But
Oh, that'd be
disappointing to
cool.
see Superman kind of on a downward trajectory because there's great stuff happening in the main title. Action Comics needs to catch up. Marvel, I only had 2 this week. This Sabretooth, The Dead Don't Talk book, I would really tell people who want a great, fun comic book. It's set in the 1920s, basically gangs of New York with Sabretooth involved with the Marvel Universe twist. Great action, great adventure, great dialogue. If you like old school kind of comics that just have fun and aren't trying to tie into the real world and dissect and deconstruct everything, that's a great book. Um, Amazing Spider-Man. it's okay. It's not bad. He's fighting like it's just mystical. It's very weird. I'm ready for Spider-Man to get a new. We're going to talk about where Spider-Man needs to be reset. This is not an awful comic. It's just at a certain point, it's so far off the beaten path of a Spider-Man story that you wonder what we're doing. This week, we're going to do a video talking about how we think we could fix the main universe Spider-Man. Last 3, and I know this is a larger stack, but the best 3 books of the week. Flash Gordon 7. Jeremy Adams continues to knock it out of the park. Mike, I think your Diamond Gremlins got you. I know most shops did not get this in San Antonio. My
I
shop was
didn't
one of the
get
rare
it.
ones that did. You'll really enjoy this one. We do have a fill-in artist for an arc, but the main artist is coming back. Seems like Flash Gordon's doing the Conan thing where they're going to have 2 artists. So like 6 issues of one, 6 of the other. Still really good art. Let me see if I can find kind of some cool, decent splash pages there. You get Flash Gordon actually kind of facing some of his allies and unpacking kind of what's happened with this new status quo, where Dale is, all that. Really crafting a great narrative there. Ghost Machine 2 releases this week and both are fantastic. Geiger #12. You kind of have this character that Geiger meets who has almost the same power set as him. It's just such a cool universe that Jeff Johns has built with Geiger. It's great to see it's not going. And Redcoat was the best book this week. Kind of again, this really fun jaunt through history has him meeting Annie Oakley this week, and what's a really just fun. I think what Redcoat has done so well is it feels like an old school comic where they're doing almost like self-contained stories now, where you could read this, and it's almost like if you were in the 90s or 80s or 70s, where you could just pick up an issue of Flash and it was just an all self-contained story. You didn't need
Yeah.
to know a million different things. They're doing really great there. Jeff Johns on both of those.